as we mentioned earlier on, there is a session that we are really excited to be bringing to the summit this year, and Kathy will do the introduction, but it's really exciting to have members of the community who, bring such conversations, bring such spaces, and this is what just makes the Leadership Forum such a unique space, because it's really, man, like a place where you really can come, be nourished, and developed and grown in all facets of your life. So to officially welcome our next speakers or provocateurs, because that is the more correct Leadership Forum title, I will hand over to the awesome Dr. B.
Thank you. Steve Gardiner has been a force to be reckoned with for his whole life, and he's been in the Leadership Forum community for his whole life, and his father before him, and I think his father before him. So Steve's been entrenched in Silver Bay and the community, and has done so many great things. He's introduced so many speakers. He's, I think, brought more people to the Leadership Forum than anyone else I've come across. And Steve is just such a great colleague and a friend. And he's never gotten to present before to the Leadership Forum. So he came to me as I was, Kat Leo and I were talking about what could we do for this forum. I started having conversations with Steve, and he said, I went to this session with this guy named Chuck Firlotte, and Steve, if you know anything about Steve, he's done so much around leadership development. He's a coach, he's a facilitator, he's brought a lot of leadership development to people, but he also does his own personal leadership development experiences. He goes to a lot of conferences and things. And he said, I went and I saw this guy, Chuck, and I said, I can't tell you how incredible the session was. He said, I think it's the best thing I've ever seen. So I thought that was high praise and a high recommendation from Steve, someone who goes to a lot of professional development. And so Steve said, we've got to get this guy, Chuck. And you know what? And I think I could do this with him, because I actually said, maybe you could do it together, as co-facilitators. So they want to present something to us, and not just present, they really want to engage us and around, healthy companies, healthy people, and to do that sort of involving the mind, spirit, and body around grounded and conscious leadership. So really kind of like from a personal standpoint. Both Steve and Chuck are really very steeped in their careers. They both have had incredible careers. You can go on our website and look at each of them, but they're both become highly credentialed. They both have led people, lots of people. They've also coached people and spent a lot of time in leadership development. So Steve and Chuck, we are so happy to have you here for our first session from 10 to 12, and please take it away.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Chuck, would you like to, that was an unbelievable introduction, but Chuck, do you want to add?
Sure, Stephen. I would say that I'm absolutely delighted to be with you all this morning. The world belongs to those who show up, and thank you for doing so. I want to thank the LFC board and the organizing team for having us. And this is an incredible opportunity. Grounded and Conscious is I think, a phenomenal leadership development tool. And I'm just excited to share it with you and to share the stage with my good friend, Steve Gardiner, who has put a lifetime into leadership development, as Kathy noted, as did his father and grandfather before him. So my journey has been one of almost exclusively in the corporate world. I was a corporate CEO until December 31st of this past year. I was in the corner office for some 16 years in a company that was a regulated utility serving 3 states in the northeast of the US. I've lived in my native Canada. The out and about will give me away. And I've worked professionally there and in England and in the US. So delighted to be here and delighted to share the stage with Brother Gardiner and to share some of our thoughts and experiences with you as well. Stephen?
Thank you, Chuck. For those of you who have been around the leadership of Forum Community Summit for some time, know that historically we had a huge presence there from people from the human resource function. And it seemed just about every year there'd be a breakout room or a discussion, a dialogue about how do we get HR people with a seat at the table. Chuck is one of the few executives in my career that I have known who made this successful transition from human resources to being an extremely effective CEO. So I'm delighted to be with him today. I consider it a privilege to be at the summit today. As been mentioned, I've actually been coming since I was 7 or 8. Professionally, I spent 17 years running management and leadership development at Big Forest Products and Paper Company. Then for 13 years, had the same role in a pharmaceutical business. But my career dream really came true 5 years ago. Because as Kathy alluded to, I had a grandfather who started Gardiner Associates, a management development firm, in 1928. And that was just a few years before he chaired the summit. He chaired it twice in the early 30s, but he founded the firm. My dad followed in my grandfather's footsteps. He was an HR guide by day, but by night he kept up a monthly magazine under Gardiner Associates title. And then he did it full time for the last 15 years of his life. So I decided 5 years ago to relaunch the firm. So it's the 3rd generation of Gardiner Associates, and I'm had an absolute great time working with organizations on their leadership needs and some of their conflict resolution needs. So we're off and ready to go. Let's have some fun. Chuck, do you want to get us started?
I will do that. Thank you. So the why is leading in a disruptive and accelerating world. This is about being grounded and conscious, and it's about a realization that while the world can be disruptive and perhaps moving all too quickly, we have the opportunity to thrive in that world by following some of the advice and counsel of the Grounded and Conscious program that we're going to talk with you about this morning. Next slide, Polly. So we live in a world of disruption. To the right, you'll see the forest that has been ravaged by something, a tornado, and that's kind of the metaphor for the disruptive world. And there are various forces that impact us. One is speed. We live in a world that where the course of human history can be changed by a 20-second video clip. Impermanence. What is fact today can be fiction tomorrow. There was a time when large corporate giants had only to fear other large corporate giants, and that's no longer true today. As a matter of fact, large corporate players can be taken out by a couple of geeks. The world is exceedingly complex, and of course, technology is ever sophisticated, and competition, of course, is fierce. And the last is globalization. And while it could be argued that the pandemic, the COVID, has taught us to rethink globalization to a certain extent, there is no argument that the world is global and that we are impacted from all corners of the planet. So what we're going to ask you to do this morning, ladies and gentlemen, is the first of your assignments. You're going to do solo for 5 minutes, 300 seconds you have, and it's with traditional old notepad and paper, unless you can do it digitally. Answer the following. What is the impact of these disruptors on your leadership, your team, or your organization? What are you currently doing now, if anything, to help you deal with these disruptors? And lastly, what would help you be more effective leading in a disruptive environment that you could focus on in this session? I believe the disruptors are going to be in the chat section, Polly. visible to everybody. So the disruptors of speed and impermanence and complexity, technology, competition, and globalization. So, and when you come back in 5 minutes, having tended to these questions, we're then going to put you in groups of 3. You will magically be paired with a couple of other of the conference attendees, and we're going to have a discussion on these. So if you would please answer the 3 questions, 300 seconds and counting, and we will be back.
I think we need to give everybody a 1-minute warning. So go as far as you can.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, if everybody could come on back, Chuck's going to pick up the next piece.
Thank you, Stephen. So thanks, folks. Thanks for tending to those questions. In the next few seconds, you're going to get an invitation asking you to join a chat. And you'll be magically paired with 2 other attendees of the conference. That's the closest we'll get to Match.com. And in that session, in that chat room, we would ask you to do the following. First of all, take 30 seconds to share your name, where you're from, and what your calling is. Your calling can be what you do professionally or what your purpose in life is. And then share one thing from outside of work that grounds you, whatever that means to you. So 30 seconds each. And then what's going to happen is you're going to discuss in the group your findings, your answers. And each individual will take 5 minutes to do that, to answer the 3 questions of the impact of the disruptors, what you're currently now doing, and what would help you to be more effective leading in that business environment, that disruptive environment, and then engage in that. So it's a total of 90 seconds for introductions, and then another 15 minutes for the discussion in the groups of 3s. So, Polly, I would assume they've been...
Yes, the breakout rooms are ready.
Good.
Some of you might find yourself with just one other partner, but that's okay. And so in a moment, you will be receiving an invitation to join a breakout room. Simply click join and you will be transferred into the breakout room. If you have any issues inside your breakout room, feel free to click on ask for help and we'll send someone into your room to help you. And to Steve and Chuck's point, you have about 15 minutes for this activity. You can use all the features within the breakout rooms, such as chat and sharing screen, sharing whiteboard, but only your team can see them. The large group cannot see them. And if you have any trouble connecting for whatever reason, feel free to leave your room and come back to the main room and we can have a conversation in the main room as well. All right, so any questions? If not, we're all ready. Here we go, rooms are open. Click join and we'll see you in a little bit.
Thank you, Polly.
It's very interesting because, again, I'm just still seeing the slide that has the instructions.
Perfect. So you don't have to.
Okay. Chuck, do you want to pick it up?
Yes. Well, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. If this were a regular conference, we'd be asking for feedback now on how some of the observations and commentary in the groups. We don't have the luxury of sufficient time for that, but what I'm going to ask you to do is go to the chat box and record your observations and thoughts, if you would, so that the whole community can refer to this and see it at our leisure. Just an observation that I would leave you with as well while you're doing that is that 2 of the disruptors were speed and impermanence. And, you know, we live in a world where nothing sticks, it seems. And it points to the importance of tradition and rituals. I was CEO of a company that was founded in 1857, 4 years before the Civil War began. And I would suggest to you that the importance of this conference at 102 years is something to cherish as well. I leave you with that thought. Please record your thoughts on your breakout sessions, if you would, in chat. And I am going to hand over to Brother Gardiner, who's going to talk to you about just how quickly the world is spinning.
One of the things that we're going to be doing, everybody, is since we don't have time, it would be a lot of fun to have an open dialogue with everybody and maybe take some of these ideas that are appearing in chat and discuss them. But I just wanted to reemphasize and underscore that what we will be doing is that this chat will be recorded, so everybody will get a chance to see all the great answers. So we appreciate you putting those in there. So here we're gonna move along. To me, this is an absolutely startling statistic. People were asked, healthy companies as recently as 2019, along with Gallup, asked this question, you know, is the world changing faster than my ability to adapt? And you can see that 52% of the respondents said that they agree, that it's changing faster than my ability to adapt. 41, you can see, said that they strongly agree, and 11. So what we'd like to do is, this has been replicated many times over the years, but we'd like to get the same sense. How are we doing in our Leadership Forum community? So we're going to start having a little poll of our own, and I'm going to ask Poe to take us on from here. Just take a moment to answer this question. The world is changing faster than my ability to adapt. Do you strongly disagree, somewhat disagree, somewhat agree, or strongly disagree, or strongly agree? Just click on one of those, and then at the bottom, hit the submit button, and Poe will give us the results in momentarily. It should only take you about 15 seconds to have this poll done.
The votes are still coming in. We have about 75% of people voted. We're just going to give it maybe another 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Okay. I'm going to end. Oh, they're still coming in. Okay, I'm going to end.
So people from Chicago, they're voting early and they're voting often.
We have about 81% in right now, and it has seemed to have stopped. So I'm going to end the poll and share the results. Can everybody see the results?
Okay, so what we have, the largest number, as you can see in front of you, is 40% somewhat agree that the world is changing faster than my ability to adapt. And again, then we have strongly agree at 19%. So we got 59% of the people saying, hey, the world is moving pretty fast. So I appreciate that. We'll have those results for everybody in a summary. Okay, I'm going to close this off. And let's move on to another interesting statistic. Here's another great chart. This one says, again, this came out just as recently as, this one was 2018 through the Harris poll and healthy companies. They do this on an annual basis, but 54% of people feel that their leaders are not adapting well. So you can see that to the right. 16 say they're doing a poor job at adapting, and fair is 38, so we got 54. We'd like to take one quick poll here also, is how is our esteemed Leadership Forum community doing? So, Poe, if we can set up this, how are my leaders adapting? Is it poor, fair, good, very good, or excellent? So, same drill here. If everybody would take a moment and click on your response and then submit it, we'll have the results in about 20 seconds.
Okay, Steve, looks like we have 87% voted.
Okay, let's move it along.
And I'm going to share the results right now with all of you.
How are my leaders adapting? Oh my goodness, we have a goose egg under excellent. No one feels like their leaders are adapting. We've got some small percentages under very good and good, but poor is 16%, fair is 36. So that comes up to 52, which was very closely mirrors what was found across organizations across the country when Healthy Companies and Harris Poll did that. So again, pretty incredible numbers. We don't want to poll you to death, but a lot of us face these kinds of problems in our organizations. And again, I could ask you to raise your hand, or we could take a poll on these. But my guess is if you take a serious look at these, you probably say, my organization faces one or two of these. As a matter of fact, back in early December, when I was going through a workshop in Washington with Healthy Companies on this, we had a dozen people in the class, and over 80% of them said we actually are experiencing in some parts of our organization every single one of those. And what we found out is that leaders who are both grounded and conscious are able to address these organizational problems in a much more effective way. So I'm going to turn it over to Chuck to start getting us some definitions about what we mean by grounded and conscious.
Thank you, Stephen. So grounded is the foundation that helps leaders stay and resilient in the face of disruptive change. So they're not adversely impacted because they can utilize tools within their universe. Not unlike if you've ever been on a cruise ship has a stabilizer, and it prevents the inhabitants of the ship from getting seasick because it grounds the large ocean vessel, and it otherwise is not going to and fro, being adversely impacted by the turbulence of the waves. Grounded leaders are able to utilize tools within their universe to help them stabilize, if you will, and to help them thrive. Conscious are tools that are used by leaders that results in them being aware and adaptive, and they lead and are more effective in leading through change. So the conscious leader is able to utilize tools within his or her universe that accelerates the journey. So they're not only grounded, but they're conscious of the world. They're conscious of their own being, of their self. They're conscious of others. They're conscious of their environment. And the best leaders, of course, have the ability to adapt and thrive. They're not put off by all the disruption. So where does grounded and conscious come from? Grounded and conscious was the brainchild of an American psychologist by the name of Bob Rosen. And he founded Healthy Companies in 1988. And he wrote the New York Times bestseller, Grounded. And he received a grant from the MacArthur Foundation some 25 plus years ago to do research as to what made successful healthy companies so. So he interviewed a whole host of companies companies and their chief executives across 50 countries, and compiled an incredible amount of research. So the grounded and consciousness program, ladies and gentlemen, is not something that Steve and I thought up. It is something that's grounded in, if I can use that term, pun intended, in research, 25 plus years of it over many, many countries. And the game changer for Bob Rosen was that traditionally we looked at all leadership programs sort of define their essence by saying what you do defines who you are. In other words, I'm an accountant, and that defines who I am. Not so, said Bob Rosen. It's who you are who really defines what you do. It's your inner self, your values. And so he chose the tree, the big oak tree, or that big Douglas fir, as the metaphor for grounded leadership. And here we see the outside appearance of the branches of the tree, but the hidden foundation is the roots, which firmly entrenched in the crust of the earth is the essence of who you are. Poe?
So what we really want to start digging into are the elements of what we really mean by this grounded leadership. And what Bob suggested in Healthy Companies has been looking at for quite some time since he came out with that seminal best-selling book was that grounded leaders pay particular attention to what we call healthy leadership. And there are 6 elements or 6 dimensions of healthy leadership. One is physical health, and this is really how you live. Emotional health is how you feel. Intellectual health takes a look at how you think, Social health is all about how you interact with others. Vocational health is how you perform, particularly in your working environment. And finally, spiritual health is how you view the world. And what we're going to do is we're going to really dig deeply in the remaining time that we have on the webinar, so you have a real understanding of each one of these. One of the things that's been just a fascinating piece of research that Bob Rosen Healthy Companies has done year after year is they take a look at people and leaders who pay attention to their physical, emotional, intellectual health, and social and vocational and spiritual health. And what this graph shows, and again, this gets replicated on an annual basis, is that leaders who pay attention to these things and take care of their physical health, et cetera, far outperform leaders who don't. So that's why I think Chuck and I got so excited about this, is it's not just based on anecdotal evidence, it's really backed up by some very strong research.
Stephen, what has always impressed me is the strongest and enduring correlation is between the spiritual and that success, which was a bit of a teller for me, because it's not something, certainly in my years, that we spoke about in the corporate world. But here in the grounded research of some 25 years of interviewing corporate executives over 50 countries, spirituality had a pretty strong and enduring correlation.
Hey, thanks, Chuck, for that observation. Again, that was a surprise to Bob Rosen and the research team. And again, it gets replicated every year when they do that. So again, what we've got here is the next level of understanding when it comes to what we mean by each of these dimensions of healthy leaders. So once again, you'll see the 6 physical health, emotional health, etc. But under each one, you'll see 3 bullets. And keeping with Bob's analogy of a tree, these bullets are really called the roots. So spiritual health has the 3 roots of higher purpose, global connectedness, generosity of spirit. Over there in the bottom right, intellectual health has the 3 roots of deep curiosity, adaptive mindset, and paradoxical thinking. Folks, we're just starting to peel back the onion. By the time we break at lunchtime, you'll have a much better comprehension of what we mean by each of these dimensions of healthy leadership, as well as you're going to get a chance to take a look at your own groundedness and how would you assess yourself on some of those roots. But to get us started, just knowing as little as you do right now about these 6 dimensions of leadership, here's a fun little exercise. In just a moment, we're going to ask you to go into using your chat. Using your chat, we're going to look first at Oprah Winfrey. I think a lot of people know Oprah Winfrey. How does she display or not display grounded leadership? Again, we got the 6 dimensions of healthy leadership and 18 roots. And so we'll put this up once again, but it's how does she do on each of, I'm sorry, let me go back. How does she do on these physical, emotional, intellectual, social, vocational, and spiritual health dimensions? So just take a moment and put in the chat box, how do you think Oprah is displaying grounded, healthy leadership? So again, Rich says, Oprah who? Oprah Winfrey. And so what I'm starting to see is people coming in here. Oprah displays all 6 and probably beyond. Spiritual health, generosity of spirit. You can see some of these. She hits agree, she's authentic, exceptional for all, intellectual, curious, spiritual, social health, resilience. Interesting. We'll record all of these.
Hey, Steve, from chat, Joel had a quick question in relation to how financial stability fits into these 6 dimensions. Can you talk a little bit about that?
We're going to come back to that a little bit later, if Joel doesn't mind. We'll get to that. This is interesting, if I might pick up on Helena's there, that she has a question, and that's what some people do when it comes to the physical health. Because a lot of us probably know that sometimes she's had her own, I don't want to say battles, but she's had some fun with her health. Let's put it that way, with her physical health. She's kind of gone up and down. She's tried very, very hard. At this point, folks, what I'd like to do is, since you're in the chat, what I'd like you to do is go back now. We're going to cut off the chat on Oprah, and I'd ask you to ask the same question. How does Lance Armstrong display or not display healthy leadership? So feel free now in the chat room, switch your focus from Oprah and to Lance Armstrong. Does anybody want to, we got Lance, physical and vocational only. Physical, all aspects, from Amy. Thanks, Amy. Cheater, thank you, Renee. Or Howard has physical and vocational. Jane says low integrity. Diana, he has appeared to hide his truth, displays physical only. It feels like 0, even his own choices questions physical health. Bill says drive to succeed overwhelms all others, and physical. Yeah. So we get a sense that being a healthy leader is not always easy. Hey, thanks very much, folks. We'll make sure that we get these recorded. I'm going to move along if that's okay. So here we're going to take a deeper look. We're going to dig into the ground of grounded leaders. On your screen now is something we call a heat map, and it gives a little further definition to the 3 elements or the 3 roots in each of the healthy areas. So you can see under physical health, body, mind awareness has a definition. You are going to have plenty of time in an exercise to really read through all of these. And we'll keep putting this particular slide up so you can read it. But here's our suggestion, so you really get a feel on how you're doing in some of these areas. We're going to have a little self-reflective time. We're going to ask you to look at each of those 18 roots and write down on a piece of paper for yourself 3 areas that you do well and you want to protect as these roots drive grounded leadership for you. Again, we're going to put so you can read these. We'll put these up again with the instructions. I just wanted to give you the instructions once, and then you'll see them again. The second thing we'll ask you to do, are there a couple of areas where you're a little bit unhappy? It says here that you're discontented with, and you know that you need to take some action to enhance this a little bit. You might not be doing a bad job, but you know you got a little ways to go to get better. Finally, in your heart of hearts, you realize there might be a few of these areas that you have just overlooked. It says you might be neglecting these and you need to really develop them. So again, what we'd like you to do is take a look at these and on a piece of paper, note 3, I'm looking here, Poe, for the instructions. Yeah, here we go. Nope. We like to pick
something added to chat.
Okay, this is going to be in the chat, folks. So if you pick up your chat, you'll see the instructions on what you're to do. So again, it's 3 areas you do well and you want to protect as these roots drive grounded leadership. Then you want to select and note 3 areas that you're discontented with, and you know you need to take some action on it. And finally, 3 areas that you are neglecting and that you need to really develop. I'm going to give you about 4 more minutes to do that. The reason why we're asking you to take a couple of notes is because after you do this on an individual basis, we've got an exercise where we're going to put you back into trios. I'll give you all the instructions for that later, but that's why we wanted you just to have it in mind and maybe jot down a note so you'll have it for your conversations.
And Jill shared a really good suggestion. You could take a screenshot of the slide so that you could refer to it, or you could maybe take a photo of it so you have it in your as a reference.
Jill.
Thank you, Jill.
Okay, folks, we're going to have a little fun right now. The first thing, before we break you into groups, we would love to have you share one area that you do well and that you want to protect. And so Poe has got the instructions up there on the slide on the upper right-hand corner, but could you just verbally tell everybody how to use the annotation and the stamp? Poe.
Absolutely. Yes. So everyone, if you could click on View Options at the top of your screen, you should be able to open a drop-down menu. And one of the options should be to annotate. And click on Annotate and a new pop-up should open. You should then see a stamp. And from stamp, you should be able to see a green tick mark. So if you use that green tick mark, you should be able to annotate directly on the slide that Steve is showing you right now. So everybody, try that.
We're looking for the green stamp at this point. We're going to use the heart on another occasion.
Yes. And this is to share one area you do well and want to protect.
So right now I'm seeing some really great numbers coming in. All right, Poe, I'm going to just wait and let a couple more come in. And then it looks like the one that people are hitting the most, we've got Deep Curiosity. He's got a lot of check marks. I see a lot of check marks around authenticity, under social health, a lot under the spiritual dimension. As Chuck alluded to before, it was kind of a surprise to the original researchers at how much spiritual health was important to people. And we see higher purpose and generosity, spirit, and global connectedness coming up as strengths for everybody. So again, Poe, if I'm not mistaken, we can actually, we can get this recorded so we could get the actual numbers and send those along later. Is that correct?
Correct. It's been saved.
At this point, if you haven't stamped it, we're going to have to close this off, and I need to clear this because we've got another one we'd like to do. In this case, you're going to use the heart stamp, and this is where we'd like you to share one area where you're not quite as happy as you'd like to be. You'd like to develop this area a little bit more. You need to enhance this a little bit. I'm feeling like it's Valentine's Day. I guess it doesn't surprise some of us that resilience is getting, you know, particularly during these turbulent times, that's got a bunch of hearts, and people want to really take a hard look at their meaningful calling. I think that's one of the really brilliant things that over the decades the people at the forum have done, is they've really taken a hard look at themselves and tried to take a look at what their meaningful calling is. Energy management is particularly important right now. If you're going to be talking to Bob Rosen, he said since February and the outbreak of this pandemic, things around energy management and taking care of ourselves and using positive emotions are absolutely essential. Hey, once again, thank you very much, and we'll get a record of this so we can pass this along. All right, we got one more you can probably guess. When you go mirror, mirror, whoops, I got the wrong one here. Let's go to mirror, mirror on the wall. If I had to choose one area that I have not been paying attention to, if I'm really honest and say mirror, mirror on the wall, what's the area that I need to develop most of all? Could you put an X in there now? What's the area? Again, this is 100% confidential, but what do you really need to work on? You know, it's amazing to me to see some of these. What a great group we, whoop, I was about to say that this group is very self-aware. We've got one person who needs to take a harder look at that one, but I'm just particularly amazed that as a community, we seem to be doing a pretty good job at deep curiosity and adaptive mindset. So again, one of the things that we got to work on is personal mastery and really paying some attention to peak performance. So thank you all very much for doing that. We've got one more activity along this heat map. This is where in just a moment, we'll put you back into your trios. And again, in the chat, Poe will have these instructions so you can see this. But this is a tremendous exercise for you to really get some great ideas on how you can strengthen a particular route. What we're going to ask you to do, as the instructions say, is take one of the X's. You were on your notes, you were going to ask to take a look at 3 possible areas that you really had neglected, that you really need to develop. Just choose one of those. And taking no more than 3 minutes with your 2 colleagues in your breakout room, explain why that showed up for you the way it did. It says share what gets in the way of you practicing that particular route. And then the group can ask questions of you to get further information. That's 3 minutes for the first person. Once that first person has taken that 3 minutes, what we're going to ask you to do is allow your teammates to give you some ideas and feedback and suggestions. And this is maybe the hardest instruction for those of us in this community. Please deeply listen. Don't interrupt them or get defensive or make any comments for 6 minutes. Just listen to their ideas and capture whatever ideas that they have. So you're going to explain it for 3 minutes. You're going to listen for 6 minutes. You're going to get all this great positive feedback and suggestions from your colleagues. Listen to their ideas. That's a total of 6 minutes. Then you can talk for no more than 60 seconds and say, hey, I really appreciate getting that great consulting from you on how I can work on this route. Thanks very much. This is what I plan to do. So if you add that time up, 3 minutes to explain the route, 6 minutes to get some really good constructive suggestions from your trio, your 2 colleagues, then restate what you're going to do with it and thank them. The first person is done. We have the second person go through the same process and the third person go through it. So we're going to put you on your own now for a half an hour. So Poe, can we put them into breakout groups?
Yes, we can. And for some of you, you might find that you will be in a new group because some people are coming and going. So you might find that you might end up in this exact same team, or you might be meeting new people. That's okay. Just continue the conversation. If you have any questions, click on ask for help. And also you should still be able to see all the instructions in chat, which should be there right now. Steve?
Have a great dialogue, everybody.
Awesome. Rooms are open. We'll see you back in about half an hour.
Hey, I want to welcome everybody back. It's absolutely incredible that we started this webinar off an hour and a half ago, asking people to take a look at, hey, what's the biggest disruptor in your organization right now? And one of them was technology. And so we really apologize. We've been really plagued by disruption. We just found out in that particular breakout just now, something happened that even Poe, who's an expert at this, has never seen. Magically or immagically, we had 2 room 3s and at least 2 room 4s. So we apologize. We hope you still had an opportunity, the vast majority of you, to have a dialogue about some of those ideas, but we apologize for that technical hiccup. What we want to do is there's another element, and we've got just a limited amount of time. I wish we had time to debrief all of this, but I'm going to give you a suggestion at the end of the session today on what we can all do with what you just talked about. But what we'd like to do now is move on to, we've been talking about grounded leadership. We'd like to take a few minutes to talk about conscious leadership. And so what I'm going to do is turn it over now to Chuck. And let me share the screen here again. And here we go. Chuck, you're on.
Thank you, Stephen. Next slide, Poe. So this morning we spent the vast majority of the morning talking about grounded leadership. And in grounded leadership, we saw that there were 6 disruptors in the world: speed, impermanence, complexity, technology, competition, and globalization. And we saw that leaders have in their toolkit 6 other items in the universe that they can utilize to fight those disruptors. And that's the physical, taking care of the physical self, the social well-being, the spiritual, the intellectual, the vocational, and the emotional. So grounded is the foundation required to survive and thrive amidst all that turbulence. Conscious, the other half of the battle. Being grounded is one thing, being conscious is another. You may have worked with people or know people in your lives that just don't get it, that don't understand or appreciate the impact of their actions. Conscious is the accelerator that enables leaders to navigate through the changes. And we'll attempt to explain that in a second. Next slide, Poe, please. We wanted to do a poll. We don't have time as we're battling against the clock. So in your own mindset, if you think you're conscious, raise your virtual hand. And if you think other people around you are conscious, what would you say? If we look at the data, if we look at the Harris poll data that comprises the grounded and conscious leadership over the, that ultimately ended up in grounded and conscious, the Harris poll data suggested when they asked executives, 94% said, yep, very conscious. When we went to the employees who essentially served these leaders, we saw a different story. 60% said, no, not so fast. So there was a significant gap between the perception and what others saw as the reality. And so in the interesting, folks, that the metaphor for grounded was the tree, right? The large Douglas fir, the large oak tree with the roots firmly embedded in the crust of the earth, stabilizing you. Consciousness has an ocean metaphor. And that's fascinating because, of course, an ocean can be calm, but an ocean can also be disruptive and angry. And if you look at this little pictorial, it shows a sailboat in port. Looks like it's being disrupted by lightning and perhaps an omen of a storm in the offing. And the desired state is a little island across the ocean. And the gap between the two, the distance between the two, is where change happens. Change happens in the gap between our current reality and our desired future. So how do we define conscious leadership? It's a triumvirate, really. It's about being aware and being conscious of self, your inner being, of what impact your actions has on others. It's about being aware of significant others in your life, colleagues, workmates, etc. And it's being aware of your environment. So awareness of self is when you know and understand your own perceptions, your own thinking, your own feelings, and how these affect your actions. It's really knowing you. And there are people amongst us who know themselves well, and the others, some remain not so well informed. And how aware are you of the relationships in your life, of others' thoughts and feelings, and the impact that your actions have on them? That's the second part of that triumvirate. And thirdly, awareness of the environment, understanding and being able to adapt to both the internal, the organizational, and the external societal forces that could impact you and your team and your business.
So thanks, Chuck, because one of the things that grounded and conscious leaders become very aware of, there are certain things that can really propel them forward. And there are certain kinds of things that hold them back. And these are called accelerators or hijackers. So for example, hijackers, as it says right here on the slide, these are things that prevent you from really hitting your objectives or fulfilling your purpose and mission. These are the kind of negative thoughts that you might have, the actions that you might take that are actually self-defeating. One of them, and we're going to share with you what healthy companies looked at. They've got about 16 common hijackers, and one of them is fixed mindset, where people just get really wrapped up on what used to work, and they're absolutely convinced that that's the only way. And as we all know, that what was normal 6 months ago is not normal today and will probably be not normal tomorrow. And some of us might actually in our organizations now be running up against some people who have this fixed mindset, who get caught in their paradigm. In the old days, Joel Barker used to say, let's be very careful of being a victim of paradigm paralysis, where we get stuck with our mindset. The second thing that Healthy Companies identifies are 16 accelerators. And as you can see here, the definition of just the opposite of those hijackers which derail us. These are things that allow us to really go forward. And self-awareness of healthy leaders gives us then the ability to really maximize the use of their accelerators during these disruptive times or during times of major transformation. One of the most common ones that's easy to practice is showing appreciation. And we all know that the neuroscientists and psychologists say now more than ever is the time to reach out to our friends, loved ones, and colleagues to give them some good, honest, deep appreciation, for giving them some positive feedback. Because again, what the neuroscientists will tell us is not only is it good for the person who's on the receiving end of this appreciation, you feel awfully good about it as well. So here again, Healthy Companies has identified, you may have some other accelerators that you think of or some other hijackers, but here's a list of the common ones that they see across organizations. What we'd like you to do is have some fun with some of these. And here's what we'll ask you to do. Take just 5 minutes. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to go back and just talk you through this. In the interest of time, this is just going to be for you yourself. We would like you to take a piece of paper out. I will keep that list of accelerators up there, and I'll keep that list of hijackers up there. And what we're going to ask you to do is choose one accelerator. This is something that you currently do well, but you really want to put your pedal to the metal and accelerate your performance during these tough times. Which one of these could you use? If you want to choose two, that's fine. But pick something from appreciation through vulnerability that you can really maximize. And jot that down. What specifically? Give yourself a little, make a commitment to use this. It's not just talk about it. As Leo said, this is all about taking action. What specific action can you do to utilize your accelerator even more? When you get done with accelerators, do the same thing with a hijacker. Take that honest look at yourself and say, hey, there's something I got to really work on that's keeping me back, that's holding me back, that's derailing me. This is the one I'm going to choose, and this is specifically what I'm going to do. So take 5 minutes in total on your own to jot down the accelerator and the hijacker and an action step for each one. Thanks very much. Folks, here's my suggestion. Now that you've hopefully written something down and made a commitment to yourself and have a specific action that you can do to use your accelerator more and start using your hijacker less, what we'd like to do is just to have a kind of a record for our Leadership Forum Summit. If you wouldn't mind going to the chat and just putting in what's the accelerator and what's the hijack. If you just pick one accelerator and one hijacker. Put that into the chat. I see him flying in. I really appreciate everybody doing that. It's going to be a good record for us to get back to everybody with. Thank you all for participating in that chat room, and you can keep them coming, but here's our thought, ladies and gentlemen. You had a time to reflect on this on an individual basis. What we're going to suggest is that within the next 48 hours, you find somebody that you may have met for the first time today in one of your breakout rooms, or somebody else that within the next 48 hours, you contact somebody, have a buddy, if you will, and take just a minute or two, each of you, to say, hey, this is the accelerator I chose, and this is how I specifically plan to use it. Hey, this is the hijacker I want to work on. I want to stop derailing myself, and this is what I plan. Just as a, to reinforce yourself, find a buddy within the next 48 hours. We're going to have a lunch break coming up here in a bit. Maybe during the lunch break, you reach out and find somebody, but just reinforce what you've looked at so far. Oops. Folks, we started off a while back looking at these 6 major disruptors, and we're hit with these pretty hard, in addition to the one that we really didn't spend a lot of time or any time on, the major disruption of the pandemic. But as we come out of that, we're still going to have to worry about speed, impermanence, complexity, technology, competition, and globalization. Our hope is that you came away with one idea on how you can work on one of those disruptive forces. We then took a look at the 6 areas of healthy leaders. Again, our hope going forward is that you came away with some commitment that you can make to yourself to maybe address one of the roots of spiritual, physical, emotional, intellectual, social, or vocational health. It's not what you say, it's not what you write down, it's what you do from here on out. Finally, we had a very quick introduction to the idea of accelerators and hijackers, and our hope is that you buddy up with somebody the next 48 hours and continue a discussion on how you're going to make a commitment to accelerate your performance and get rid of those derailers. We only have a few minutes left. What we'd love to do is open it up if somebody has a question or a comment or an observation. Poe, I'm going to ask you, what's your best suggestion? Should we just unmute people? How do you want to handle that?
Yes, if anyone would like to unmute, please raise your hand. That way we can unmute you in an orderly fashion so we're not talking over each other. If you could go to participants, and that you should either find 3 dots that you could click on, and you should have the option to raise hand, or the raise hand button should be there. Could be there actually. So just click on it. We'll see that you raise your hand and we'll unmute you. Or you could unmute yourself when we call on you. Or just chat your question, that would be another option as well.
So if anybody has a question, we'll do our best to take 1 or 2 questions, or if you have a comment, we'll take a look at those now. I'm going to make a commitment. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. I'll have to ask Ann Hunnix and and perhaps Kathy Bittner, but I'll stay on or available if somebody wants to contact me during the lunch break.
So this call will remain open during the lunch break. So anybody who wants to chat and, talk, Steve will be here. And a lot of the rest of us will be coming and going. But anybody can, it's as if you've all gone to the lunchroom together and you can find each other.
Steve, if I could, I just wanted to say it's been a pleasure. And our names and contact information are here. Participants can feel free to connect with us as well at any time if you want to follow up on any of this or have a discussion.
Yes, thank you all for being so active in your participation, both in the chats and in the breakout rooms. And again, I'm going to stay on the line and I'll welcome any questions you have, and I'll do my best to answer them. And I can't wait till we all get back physically together next year at the 103rd Leadership Forum Summit, because we will be on the brand new softball field and we will play a doubleheader.
Steve, I have a conflict and I cannot stay on, but would invite contact in whatever way, email or phone as well. So the world belongs to those who show up. I begin as I end as I started this morning. So thank you for doing so.
Chuck, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Chuck and Steve. Poe, is it possible for us to stop